In a world that feels like it's spinning faster and faster, with stress coming at us from all angles, a lot of people are looking back to some really old traditions for answers. Today, we're going to dive into that world. We're talking ancient herbs and modern stress. We're asking a pretty simple question. Can these traditional remedies actually help? Let's get into it.
Does any of this sound familiar? You know that feeling? That constant buzz of being on all the time? Your thoughts are racing just when you're trying to fall asleep, and you just feel stretched thin. If that hits home, you are definitely not alone. I mean, this is the reality of modern stress for so many of us.
So, for literally centuries, cultures all over the globe have used specific plants to help them build resilience and find a little bit of calm. It's this deep well of ancient wisdom. But what does modern science have to say about it? Let's put these old traditions under the microscope and see what the evidence really shows.
Okay, so to really understand this world, we've got to get the language right first. These botanicals, these herbs, they generally fall into two main categories. They're called adaptogens and nervines.
So what's the difference between these two? Well, here's a good way to think about it. Adaptogens are kind of like a thermostat for your body. Their whole job is to help you adapt to stress and bring all your systems back into a state of balance. Nervines, on the other hand, they're more like a dimmer switch. They work directly on your nervous system to soothe and calm things down, helping you wind down and just relax. So here are some of the heavy hitters in the adaptogen world. You've probably heard of ginseng for stamina, or maybe rhodiola for mood and energy. And then, of course, there's ashwagandha, which we're going to take a much closer look at in just a minute. The big thing to get here is that these aren't some kind of quick fix. They're seen as tools to help build your body's resilience over time. All right, now on the flip side, we have the nervines. Think of these as your go-to when you need to feel calm, like right now. Ever had a cup of chamomile tea to unwind after a long day? Yep, that's a nervine at work. Herbs like passion flower, valerian, even lavender, they all work directly on that nervous system to help dial down that feeling of restlessness. Okay, so to really get a handle on the science, we're going to zoom in on one of the most popular and, frankly, one of the most well-researched adaptogens out there, ashwagandha.
Its scientific name, Withania somnifera, actually gives us a huge clue. Somnifera is Latin for sleep-inducing, which hints at one of its biggest traditional uses. It's a real cornerstone of Ayurvedic medicine, and that name, smell of the horse, is thought to refer to its kind of earthy smell and the strength it's believed to give you.
So, okay, the tradition is fascinating, for sure. But putting that aside for a second, what does the hard evidence actually say? What did the clinical trials tell us about ashwagandha's power against stress? Let's dive in. So get this, a major review back in 2021 looked at 7 different studies, and the results were pretty compelling. They found that people taking ashwagandha didn't just say they felt less stressed, they actually had lower levels of serum cortisol. And that's a big deal because cortisol is a key stress hormone we can literally measure in your blood. It's objective evidence. It seems like the sweet spot for these benefits was a daily dose somewhere between 500 and 600 milligrams. And what's really interesting is that we see this pattern pop up across different groups of people. One study with healthy but stressed adults found that even a lower dose, 300 milligrams, led to lower cortisol and better focus. Then you have another study with stressed out college students, and at a higher dose of 700 milligrams, they reported feeling a greater sense of calm. So we're seeing this consistent pattern, even with different people and different doses. Okay, but let's pump the brakes for just a second. It's super important to balance all this enthusiasm with some real scientific rigor. A big scientific task force looked at all the evidence for generalized anxiety disorder. What they did was give ashwagandha a provisional recommendation. Now that's a good sign, but that word provisional is really key. It basically means they see promise, but they want to see more large-scale data before they're willing to give it a stronger thumbs up. So what about that sleep-inducing part of its name? Does it actually hold up? Well, another big analysis from 2021 looked specifically at sleep, and it found a small but statistically significant improvement in overall sleep. The effect was even more noticeable for people who already had a diagnosis of insomnia. And again, the magic numbers seemed to be around 600 milligrams a day, taken for at least 8 weeks. And this brings us to an absolutely critical point. It's so easy to think, oh, it's an herb, it's natural, it must be totally safe, right? Well, that is not always the case. So let's talk about the risks and side effects you need to know about. So in the short term, we're talking up to about 3 months, ashwagandha seems to be pretty well tolerated. The most common side effects are usually pretty mild, things like an upset stomach or feeling a little drowsy, but
And this is the kicker, this is a big one. We have no idea about its long-term safety. The studies just haven't been done. We don't have that data.
And you really need to take this seriously. This quote is straight from the National Institutes of Health. They point out that there are rare but more severe side effects, including a few reports linking ashwagandha supplements to liver injury. Now, it seems to be uncommon, but it is a potential risk that you just cannot ignore.
So what this all means is that some people absolutely need to be extra cautious. Experts advise against using it if you're pregnant, if you have a thyroid condition, or for men with hormone-sensitive prostate cancer because of how it might affect your hormones. And of course, given that potential liver risk, anyone who already has liver disease should also steer clear.
Okay, so we've looked at some really promising evidence, but we've also looked at some very crucial safety warnings. How in the world do you put all of that together to make a smart decision for yourself? Let's walk through a little framework for how to think about it.
Here's a pretty simple 4-step approach. Number 1, acknowledge the tradition, the long history here. 2, scrutinize the science, the stuff we just talked about. 3, and this is totally non-negotiable, understand the risks. And number 4, the single most important step of all, I cannot stress this enough, talk to your doctor. They're the only person who can help you understand how a supplement might fit in with your personal health situation. That conversation is absolutely essential.
Which, of course, brings us right back to our big question. Are these ancient herbs a key to building resilience in our crazy modern world? Well, the evidence is definitely promising, but it also feels like the science is still playing catch-up to tradition and, let's be honest, to the hype. So maybe the real question you should be asking yourself isn't just, does it work? But is it the right and the safe choice for me? Thanks for joining me.